Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasul al-Kareem, wa ba'd. Alhamdulillah, as of sunset today, it is the 29th of Dhul Hijjah. So on Saturday today, we will be looking for the sun for Muharram. It is extremely difficult. We'll be looking for the crescent moon for Muharram. Dhul Hijjah's moon going into Muharram is the most difficult to sight. Muharram's moon, Muharram's hilal, is the most difficult to sight because it's the thinnest. I've only been able to see it since I've been in the United Kingdom perhaps 3 times. It's extremely difficult to see. The ones for Safar, Rabi al-Awwal, Rabi al-Akhir, very easy. But those for Muharram, extremely difficult to see. So if you have the opportunity, if you see it, it should be almost a pumpkin orange color, but very thin. But if you see it, it will be unmistakable. It will be an orange pumpkin-y color, and the star of Polaris should be almost directly over it if you see it in the sky. That's if we have the opportunity to see it. Now, we are looking at Ayah 18 of Surah Al-Muddathir, because when we last came together, we reached Ayah 17 of Surah Al-Muddathir, the 74th Surah. The Imam, he starts by saying, quote, "And the Exalted One, in mentioning the ayah, mentions how the unbelievers reflect on what is being said in the Quran. He says, إِنَّهُ فَكَّرَ وَقَدَّرَ فَقُتِلَ كَيْفَ قَدَّرَ ثم قتل كيف قدر ثم نظر ثم عبس وبسر ثم أدبر واستكبر فقال إن هذا إلا سحر يؤثر إن هذا إلا قول البشر سأصليه سقر وما أدراك ما سقر لا تبقي ولا تذر لواحة للبشر عليها 19 وما جعلنا أصحاب النار إلا ملائكة وما جعلنا عدتهم إلا فتنة للذين كفروا ليستيقن الذين أوتوا الكتاب ويزداد الذين آمنوا إيمانا ولا يرتاب الذين أوتوا الكتاب والمؤمنون وليقول الذين في قلوبهم مرض والكافرون ماذا أراد الله بهذا مثلا كذلك يضل الله من يشاء ويهدي من يشاء وما يعلم جنود ربك إلا هو وما هي إلا ذكرى للبشر كلا والقمر والليل إذ أدبر والصبح إذا أسفر إنها لإحدى الكبر نذيرا للبشر لمن شاء منكم أن يتقدم أو يتأخر كل نفس بما كسبت رهينة إلا أصحاب اليمين في جنات يتساءلون عن المجرمين ما سلككم في سقر قالوا لم نك من المصلين ولم نك نطعم المسكين وكنا نخوض مع الخائضين وكنا نكذب بيوم الدين حتى أتانا اليقين فما تنفعهم شفاعة الشافعين فما لهم عن التذكرة معرضين كأنهم حمر مستنفرة فرت من قسورة بل يريد كل امرئ منهم أن يؤتى صحفا منشرة كلا بل لا يخافون الآخرة كلا إنه تذكرة فمن شاء ذكره وما يذكرون إلا أن يشاء الله هو أهل التقوى وأهل المغفرة. Indeed, he reflected and then he figured. And cursed is the one how he figured. And cursed is the one how he figured. Then he looked. Then he frowned. And then scowled. Then he turned away and became arrogant. And he said, this is only clear fabricated magic. This is only the words of a human being. And I will certainly roast such a one in the saqar. And what will cause you to know what is the saqar? Nothing can remain and nothing will be left behind. It peels the flesh. And as guardians over it are 19. We did not make the companions of the fire and guardians as such except as angels. And we made their number only to be a test for those who rejected faith, so that it might be a means for those who were given the book to be certain, and it might increase those who believe in Iman. And those who were given the book should not have any doubt, nor the believers. And those who have a disease in their hearts and the unbelievers might say, what does Allah intend by this metaphor? Likewise, He, Allah, leads astray whoever He wills, and He guides who He wills. No one knows the armies of your Lord except for Him. It is nothing except an admonition to humanity. By no means by the moon and the night when it recedes and the morning when it advances. Indeed, it shall be brought to pass in greater number. A warning to humanity for whoever wills from among you, that he might bring it forth or delay. Every soul shall have its earning that it put forward, except for the people of the right hand. They shall be in gardens, asking, looking around. Regarding the criminals, they shall be in the saqar. And it will be said to them, what caused you to be in the saqar? They will say, we didn't used to be among those who prayed. We did not feed those who were needy. And we used to dispute with those who were arguing. And we used to deny the day of judgment, until there came to us the certainty. And there shall be nothing to benefit them of the intercessors, nor intercession. For they had fled from the remembrance from beforehand, as they flee now. It is as if they are donkeys, fleeing and running about, fleeing from a lion ready to pounce. Each man from among them wants as evidence that he might be given pages spread out. By no means. They don't fear the hereafter. By no means. Indeed, it is an admonition. For whoever wills, he remembers. And no one can remember except that Allah has willed. He is the possessor of piety and the possessor of forgiveness. Surah Al-Muddathir, the 74th surah, ayat 18 to 56. When the Exalted One is said that he thought or reflected, meaning he thought or reflected on what was said in the Quran, and he figured, meaning in himself. فَقُتِلَ is may he be killed, or he was killed, but this is also an expression meaning may he be cursed. So may he be cursed how he figured. Then again, may he be cursed how he figured. Because what he figured was what he was saying in himself and the denial that he was given. And so the expression here, how he figured, is indicating that Allah is rebuking such a one. And it is repeated because of ta'keed, which is emphasis. Then he looked, meaning he sought out what he didn't agree with in the Quran and rejected it based on that. Then he frowned and grimaced, meaning the dislike of the Quran was apparent on his face. Because a man's face will convey his secrets. So when a man frowns, shows anger, that appears on his face. And when he looks and there's dislike on his face, his look is of strong dislike. Just the same as when one is reflecting on something, he's deep in thought. Then he turned his back, meaning on Iman, and became arrogant. Because when he was called to Iman, he became arrogant and said, this Quran is only magic that has been fabricated by magicians. It's only the words of a human being. It's not the speech of Allah the Exalted, is what he is saying. But Allah said in response to these two expressions, I shall certainly roast him in the saqar, meaning he shall be roasted and entered into the great fire. Now the saqar has already been referred to in Surah Al-Qamar, the 54th surah, 48. And what shall cause you to know what is the saqar? This expression, what shall cause you to know, is used to show the severity of a thing. Not shall remain, nor shall any refuge be given. Meaning, there shall be no flesh that remains except it is consumed. And there shall be no one given shelter or reform except that when they think that they should die, they will be reanimated and suffer again. And the flesh shall be distorted and changed to such a degree that it will be burned beyond recognition. Ibn Mas'ud, Ibn Sumayfa', Ibn Abi Abla recited as Lawahatun or Lawahatan. Now, this expression Bashar means a human being or all human beings. It is said this can be referring to all of humanity. And the Bashar means, or Bashara means the flesh. And the flesh means the complexion. So the fire will actually change the complexion. It will distort the complexion. This was mentioned by Mujahid al-Farra and al-Zajjaj. So these are the human beings from the people of the fire, that their complexion is actually distorted and changed. This was also mentioned by Al-Akhfash and Ibn Qutaybah. And there are 19 guardians over it, meaning these are the guardians of the fire. And the first guardian's name, which we learned in other surahs, his name was Malik. And with him he has 18 assistants. Their eyes are like lightning striking. And their faces and mouths as they speak look like sparks that come from a flame of fire when it's been kindled. Between two shoulder blades, the distance between the two shoulder blades of one of them takes a year in travel. And if one of them should spread his hand, it is like the distance between the tribes of Rabi'ah and Mudar. These ones have had mercy removed from them, for they bring wrath. When this ayah was sent down, Abu Jahl said, Muhammad is trying to scare you with just 19 people? So he has an army of just 19 of these guardians? Well, we should have sufficient numbers to deal with them. Every 10 of you can take on one of them. Or every one of you can take on 10 of them. And if we can do that, then we'll be able to get out of the fire immediately. Abu al-Ashadain, whose name was Usayd ibn Kalda, and others, such as Kalda ibn Khalaf al-Jumuhi, said, O gathering of Quraysh, I come among you, and let me rise up 10 on one side, and 9 on my left, and let us go into the paradise, and loot it, because he has no guardians over the paradise of the fire except for 19. But Allah sent down the ayah, we did not make the guardians of the fire except as angels, meaning they're not human beings. So, who is the one who's able to defeat the angels from the human beings? Who can conquer over them? And we did not make their number, meaning the number 19 being mentioned, which some would take as smallness, except as a test, as a way of astranus to those who reject faith until they said the words they said. But those who were given the book should have certainty in what they've heard, because the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came with the truth, because their number is mentioned in the Torah as 19. Those who believe from the people of the book increase in their iman, and they believe and testify to the truthfulness of Muhammad ﷺ when they find what he has informed them of, and it agrees and is in accord with what is in their book. Those who were given the book and the believers have no doubts of this matter or the number of guardians. But let those who have a disease in their hearts. Now the disease being made reference to is nifaq, which is understood by the vast majority, the secret kufr. After nifaq, there is also doubt, shak, as said by Muqatil. Now it's been said by some that this is making reference to the Jews of the people of Medina. And this establishes that this ayah is a Medina ayah. The rancor that people have within them as well is discussed by Al-Husayn ibn al-Fadl. Because keep in mind, the hypocrites and their appearance and these people with diseases in their heart, this was not in Mecca. There was no nifaq in Mecca. So this ayah is referring to the fact of people who would come later, who would have this nifaq, who were waiting to reject faith. As far as those who reject faith, they are the idol worshippers of the Arabs. And they say, what does Allah intend by this? Which thing does Allah intend by this speech and this narration, this information? So what's meant by this? So those Likewise, those who would deny the number of the guardians of the fire, they are led astray. But whoever affirms all of the angels and all of them is guided by bearing witness. Allah leads astray who He wills and He guides who He wills. This was sent down regarding the statement of Abu Jahl when he said, think about Muhammad and his army, there are only 19. But Allah said, no one knows the armies of your Lord except for Him. Meaning the angels who He, Allah, created them to punish the people of the fire, each one of these 19 has guardians and assistants, of which no one knows their number except for Allah. Al-Mawardi has mentioned one of the wisdoms in there being 19 angels. And for each of the wisdoms, he's given 19. He said, 19 is significant because the number gathers more than a few and less than a great number. So it is a compound number. Also, it is greater than 10, but less than 20. And this number is sufficient. It is an odd number. Then when we look at the discussion of Allah in the ayah, then you look at what's been mentioned regarding the fire. This is not except a remembrance, meaning the fire made reference to in the earthly life is only a remembrance so that people might reflect on what is coming in the hereafter. And this is in truth by the moon, by the night, when it recedes. إِذَا أَدْبَرْ. Now this has been recited like this by Ibn Kathir, Abu Amr, Ibn Amr, Al-Kasai, Abu Bakr, Ibn Asim. Whereas Nafi', Hamza, Hafs, Al-Fadl from Asim and Yaqub recite idh rather than idha. So these are referring to the same thing. So when the night recedes, when it goes away, when it ceases to be because it starts to diminish, and the day when it advances, when it enlightens and it comes forward and the daytime becomes clear. This, the advancement of the day, innaha, the advancement of the day is only a warning and an admonition of something. So even in this is a sign, as Ibn Qutaybah said, Kubar, it is one of the great signs. Kubar is the plural of Kubra. So it is one of the great signs of Allah. So by Allah, Allah has not warned of anything except that He's made it clear. Ibn Sa'ib and Muqatil have said, the Kubar are understanding the great signs of Allah. The great signs of Allah indicate the great fire hereafter. This is a warner to humanity. So the great and the small have a warner. And the warning being referred to, the Nadhir, is the great fire. It's the warning regarding the fire. Whoever so wills from among you, meaning from humanity, let him go forward in obeying Allah and delay disobedience whenever possible, as said by Ibn Jurayj. And by delaying in doing a disobedient action, whether he's unsure of whether this action is disobedient, by delaying, he cuts off disobedience. It's mentioned by Ibn Jurayj. And by someone running forward to the fire or being delayed from the paradise, let that not be someone's state, as said by As-Sudai. Let someone go forward for the good and delay in evil, as said by Yahya bin Salam. Let him go forward in Iman and delay from turning away. Let him take the heed and admonition, whoever can affirm. Every soul shall have that which it earned and put forward, except the people, وَإِلَّا أَصْحَابُ الْيَمِينَ, the people of the right hand. This refers to the infants, the babies of the Muslims, because there's no reckoning for them, because there's no sins written for them. This was mentioned by Ali ibn Abi Talib and Al-Farra. And every soul shall have what it's put forward as its recompense also refers to every soul from the people of the fire that's given its recompense in the fire, except the people of the right hand, because these are the believers and they're in the paradise. And they shall be pardoned for their sins. It's about the haq. Whereas those who believe from the people of the right hand, they shall not receive a reckoning, as said by Ibn Jurayj. They will be in the paradise asking and looking. So when the people who believe in the oneness of Allah, the people of Tawheed, leave from the fire, the believers will say to whoever remains in the fire, what caused you to be in the saqar? Meaning, what caused you to go into it? What led to you being there, as said by Muqatil? And they will say, we did not used to pray. Meaning they didn't pray to Allah in the earthly life. And we did not used to feed the needy. Meaning we did not give sadaqah for the sake of Allah and feed the needy. And we used to argue with the disputers, the people of falsehood and liars. And we denied the day of resurrection, meaning the day of reward and accounting, until the certainty came to us. And this is the death. Allah the Exalted then says, the intercession of those given permission will avail them of nothing. Now this establishes that after the intercession of the prophets and the angels and the martyrs and the believers, that there are other intercessions, but this is proof that intercession can only benefit the one who believed. Close quote. Now understand then very quickly, this ayah, or this section of ayat, is one of the evidences that the scholars use to establish that whoever abandons prayer in totality is not a Muslim. Because look at the language that's being used. We didn't used to pray. We didn't used to give the zakah. We used to argue with the people. We used to dispute with the people of falsehood until death came to us. And intercession will not benefit them. So if someone abandons prayer altogether, the scholars are clear that that person is not a Muslim. Right? They're clear on that. And this is one of the proofs. Why? Because who's in the saqar? Fir'aun, Haman, their armies. And that's a part of Jahannam, because Jahannam is an entire corporate structure of the hereafter, which is punishment. But there are sections of it that people will come out of. The Saqar is one of the sections of the Great Fire that no one exits from. Right? That's one of the places that no one exits from. Now, the places where the Saqar has been mentioned include Surah Al-Qamar, which the Imam mentioned moments ago. There is a hadith in Imam al-Suyuti's collection in which the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever abandoned prayer shall be resurrected with Fir'aun, Haman, and Umayyah ibn Khalaf. Now what do all these people have in common? They're all kuffar who knew the truth and rejected it and still wouldn't do it. Now, if we're talking about someone who prays and sometimes he doesn't, someone who does one prayer or misses off one, this is a different issue. We're talking about someone who's abandoned the prayer in totality. Right? If you look, scholars did not start talking about the issue of someone having to make up an abundance of prayer. The first scholar who started talking about what's called qada umri, where someone has lifelong qadas of 5 times salawat that they've missed all, the first scholar who ever had to pronounce on that issue was Imam Mansur al-Buhuti in 1051 Hijri. Before that time, that never existed. Why? Because who left off prayers of that huge abundance of that number over that long of a period of time? Remember, the Maraji' give rulings in ijtihad based upon what? Real-time things that happen. So if you look in Imam Muwaffiquddin al-Qudama, if you look at all the books of the Mutaakhirin, there's nothing in there about large, massive amounts of salawat. Why? Because it wasn't happening. The issue was, what if someone missed Fajr and then Dhuhr comes, does he make it up? If you look at the issues that are listed by Imam Muwaffiquddin, Ibn Battal, who came about a century before him, there's nothing in there about Qada Umri. There's nothing at all. You get to the time of Al-Buhuti. So now look at this. Imam Muwaffiquddin Qudama dies 620 Hijri. He dies 620. Ibn Battah dies 387. Al-Buhuti dies 1051. What happened between that time that new issues had to be brought, new rulings to deal with this new condition? This is the Kafir calendar. You're looking at 1600s. Not that it matters. We use the Hijri, but 1051, there's hundreds of years apart. So all the scholars are clear on this issue. But when you start talking about people leaving some, and then they leave others, people leaving some, and then they leave others, this leads to what's known as Qada Umri. And the scholars did not have to deal with this issue before in the beginning. Now that says something about the conditions, but that also says something about the type of Muslims. Because if you didn't have to deal with Qada Umri in the time of Imam Muwaffiquddin, what does that say? That people were quick to make up salawat. So then what does that say about Muslims in the time of Imam Mansur al-Buhuti? That they're not. That they leave things off. They drag their heels. They leave. That you're talking about different types of Muslims. They're not the same people. They're all Muslims, but they're not the same type of people. Right? So that's just something for consideration. Now, the Imam goes on to say, quote, and the Exalted One, when he mentions, and they shall be fleeing, they flee from the admonition. What's causing them to do so? Meaning, the unbelievers of the Quraysh, when they flee from the Quran and the remembrance and its preaching, there's nothing waiting for them in the hereafter when they flee from the Quran and they don't believe in it. Then Allah likens their fleeing from the Quran like donkeys that run from a lion waiting to pounce. Abu Ja'far, Nafi, Ibn Amr, Mufaddal from Asim recite this as كأنهم حمر مستنفرة, while others say مستنفرة. So they're fleeing from the qaswara, which qaswara is another word for the asad, but the asad in this case is waiting to pounce, as mentioned by Ibn Abbas, as well as Abu Hurairah and Zayd ibn Aslam. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said, Humur mentioned in this ayah refers to wild donkeys that might be chased by the lion over an open area. So likewise, these idol worshippers, when they hear the Prophet ﷺ, they flee from him. Just like you would see those wild donkeys fleeing from the lion in the open. This is the understanding also given by Abu Ubaidah az-Zajjaj ibn Qutaybah. It is as if they are frightened because the lion that is laying in wait to pounce is of the strongest of the animals of prey. The qaswa also refers to the arrow that is thrown, or the spear, as mentioned by Ibn Abbas, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, Mujahid, Qatada, Al-Dhahaq, Muqatil, and Ibn Kaysan. So they are fleeing. These men are fleeing as if they are fleeing from the lion and the hunt as if they are being hunted. This was mentioned by Ibn Abbas and Nasr ibn Imran al-Dab'i. And every man from among them wants pages spread out. Meaning they had said to the Prophet ﷺ, you tell us what to do and that we are to follow you. So let the morning come and every man from among us bring out a book that we can look at from Allah. And have Allah address that book to such and such, Ibn such and such from Allah. When we see this, then we'll believe you. This was mentioned by the vast majority in the narration. They wanted to have an immunity from the fire, that they would never be punished therein, and they wanted specific books given to each one of them, as said by Abu Salih. They had said, a man, when he used to sin among the children of Israel, he would find a book written in the morning that had in it the record of his sins. So then why don't you do the same thing for us so we can see that? This ayah is an indication that that is not from that which Allah has revealed, as said by Al-Farra. Allah has said, by no means, meaning no books or pages spread out shall be given to them. They don't fear the hereafter. They don't fear the punishment. If they feared the fire and what was mentioned, they would have accepted these ayat after the proof was established. But in all truth, this is only a remembrance and a reminder. So whoever wills shall certainly remember it, meaning the Quran. Whoever wills, whoever decides he remembers the Quran, takes admonition from it, understands it. He's remembered the Quran. And then he's taken affairs into his own hands. But Allah says the only way that someone can do this, no one remembers except that Allah wills. Meaning no one has guidance unless Allah gives him guidance first. He is the possessor of piety, meaning the possessor that he gives people taqwa. And the possessor of forgiveness, meaning he is the one that possesses the ability to forgive whoever repented. It's narrated from Anas ibn Malik from the Messenger of Allah ﷺ that he recited this ayah and then said, your Lord has said, I am the possessor and giver of taqwa. No one is to associate someone else with me. And I am the possessor in which whoever fears me and doesn't associate any partner with me, I will certainly forgive that one. And this is collected by Imam Ahmad. We then come to Surah Al-Qiyamah, and this is a Meccan surah by consensus. Allah the Exalted, He says, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. La uqasimu biyawmil qiyamah. Wa la uqasimu bin nafsil lawwamah. أيحسب الإنسان أن لن نجمع عظامه بلى قادرين على أن نسوي بنانه بل يريد الإنسان ليفجر أمامه يسأل أيان يوم القيامة فإذا برق البصر وخسف القمر وجمع الشمس والقمر يقول الإنسان يومئذ أين المفر كلا لا وزر إلى ربك يومئذ المستقر ينبأ الإنسان يومئذ بما قدم وأخر بل الإنسان على نفسه بصيرة ولو ألقى معاذيره لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به إن علينا جمعه وقرآنه فإذا قرأناه فاتبع قرآنه ثم إن علينا بيانه كلا بل تحبون العاجلة وتذرون الآخرة وجوه يومئذ ناظرة إلى ربها ناظرة ووجوه يومئذ باسرة تظن أن يفعل بها فاقرة كلا إذا بلغت التراقي وقيل من راق وظن أنه الفراق والتفت الساق بالساق إلى ربك يومئذ المساق فلا صدق ولا صلى ولكن كذب وتولى ثم ذهب إلى أهله يتمطى أولى لك فأولى ثم أولى لك فأولى أيحسب الإنسان أن يترك سدى ألم يك نطفة من مني يمنى ثم كان علقة فخلق فسوى فجعل منه الزوجين الذكر والأنثى أليس ذلك بقادر على أن يحيي الموتى. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the compassionate. I swear by the day of resurrection, and I swear by the self-reproaching soul. Does the human being figure that we shall not gather together his bones? Indeed, we are able to even bring about and put back the tips of his fingers. But the human being insists on sinning blatantly in front of him. He asks, when is the day of resurrection? So when the sight is blotted out, when the moon is eclipsed, when the sun and moon are brought together, the human being will say on that day, where can we flee? By no means. There is no way and no place to flee to. No burden to your Lord. On that day, the matter is established. The human being will be informed on that day in what he put forward and what he delayed. Indeed, the human being shall have utmost insight into himself, what he threw forward of his excuses and affairs. So move not your tongue with speed or haste as you recite it. It is upon us to gather it and its recitation. And when we have recited it and sent it forward, then follow its recitation. It is upon us to explain the recitation. By no means they love the fleshly earthly life, and they abandon the hereafter. Faces that day shall be radiant, looking at their Lord, and faces that day shall be downcast. Is it thought then that there shall be done with these faces some wrong or some oppression? By no means. When it reaches the throats, and when it is said, who was brought forward, and he had thought that he had escaped, but each flank is tied together and bound, and to your Lord that day is the return, they shall be bound. He had not been truthful, he had not given charity, nor had he prayed, but he had denied and turned away. Then he went back to his people, lawless. No, it's coming forward for you, it's coming forward. Yes, indeed, it is coming forward for you and coming forward. Does the human being believe that he will be left alone? Is it not the case that he was a sperm drop from fluid? Then he was a clot. Then he was created as something else and brought forward and given form and shape. And He, Allah, made from them the two, male and female. Is the same one then not able to give life to the dead after all of this? Surah Al-Qiyamah, the 75th Surah, ayat 1 to 40. When the Exalted One has said, I surely swear, this oath is being given as an indication of the severity of the matter, just as much as لِأَلَّا يَعْلَمَ أَهْلُ الْكِتَابِ, so that the people of the book might not know. Surah Al-Hadid, ayah 29. Surah 57, ayah 29. So He made this a refutation against those who deny the resurrection. So this oath is being given, but it's also a refutation, because Allah is swearing by this very day, and that it is coming. And this is a refutation of the deniers of resurrection. Just as much as when someone says, no, by Allah, this is being given as an oath. Allah, He Himself is swearing by the day of resurrection as an emphasis. And He swears by the self-reproaching soul. The self-reproaching soul is the blameworthy soul, as said by Ibn Abbas. He shall blame himself, and his blame will benefit him not. The self-reproaching soul can also be the soul of the believer who blames himself and looks for rectitude, as said by Al-Hasan al-Basri. You don't see the believer except that he blames himself in every state for his sins. He blames no one else. And this is the state of all souls on that day. There is no soul, righteous or sinful, except that on that day it will blame itself, based upon what it did with good and increased, or if it did wickedness and increased. Does the human being reckon that we shall not assemble his bones? Meaning the unbeliever. The person specifically addressed, as stated by Ibn Abbas, is Abu Jahl. Whereas Muqatil has said, Adi ibn Rabi'ah is also indicated. So does he not reckon that He, Allah, will gather together these very bones? And the Prophet ﷺ said, indeed, he knows this is true, but he denies and he mocks. But Allah has sent down this ayah as truth. Indeed, for a surety, He, Allah, is able to gather these together, and shall, even the tips of the fingers. Meaning that He, Allah, has made the fingers of the two hands and the fingers of the 2 feet as one thing. He shall bring them to be the same way He shall bring about, and the same way He brought about the toes of the camel, or the hoof of the donkey. It shall be brought out and brought back. Now the hands and feet of the human being are used for either noble actions like reading and stitching, as said by the vast majority, or they can be used for wicked actions. So He, Allah, will even put the tips of the fingers back, even if they are small, even if the bones are small. He can gather together all these things and put them back as He has declared, for He is the Lord over all. This was mentioned in Surah Al-Anfal, the 8th Surah, ayah 12. The human being wants to openly sin and deny that which is in front of him of resurrection and reckoning and accounting, as said by Ibn Abbas. The sin, and he doesn't want to put forward and he goes forward towards sin and delays repentance. He thinks, I'll repent when I'm ready. This was mentioned by Sa'id ibn Jubayr. And so this is the intent of the human being. In one instance can be the Muslim who puts off repentance. And in another instance it can be the unbeliever. He asks, when shall be the day of resurrection? Now this is the unbeliever asking. To which the answer is, when the sight is blotted and taken away. Meaning it's overwhelmed. Much like when lightning flashes, someone is blinded for a moment. So the sight of the unbeliever shall be blinded on the day of resurrection. He will not be able to gather his footing or gather himself from the things that he shall witness, which he had denied in this earthly life. Mujahid said, the confounding of the vision occurs also at the time of death. وَخَسَفَ الْقَمَرِ, and the moon is eclipsed. Now, the expression used for eclipse, for the eclipse of the sun or the moon, kasaf and khasaf both carry the same meaning, which is the loss of light. And when the sun and moon are gathered together, وَجُمِعَ الشَّمْسُ وَالْقَمَرُ, so the gathering between them means when their essences are brought together. Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu has said, they're being gathered together like two camels when they come together and they're joined together. Ata ibn Yasar says, they shall be gathered together and then they shall be hurled into the very oceans and destroyed. Meaning the ocean of the great fire. Also, the end result of the sun and the moon is that a time will come in which they will both appear in the west. And then they will lose their light, as said by Al-Farra and Az-Zajjaj. Indeed, the human being, meaning the one denying the day of resurrection, asks, where can I flee to? Meaning, where is there a place to flee to? Where is there a place to seek safety that I may hide? But indeed, there is no such location. There is no burden that can be borne by someone else to your Lord on that day, who shall establish things, and he is the one you shall return back to. The human being will be informed of what he put forward and what he delayed on. What he did before his death, how many years he had, what happened at the time of his death, as said by Ibn Mas'ud and Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma. He'll be informed of the first of his deeds and the last of his deeds, as said by Mujahid. He'll be informed of the beginning of his evil, the last of his evil, the beginning of his good and last of his good, as said by Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl. He'll be mentioned of the beginning and how he went forward for the fard, and the last of his fard, and the last thing he did, as said by Ad-Dahhak. He'll be whatever disobedience he did, that he went forward to, and how he put off acts of obedience, how he went forward with his wealth, but then how he had put off the inheritance, as said by Zayd ibn Aslam. Indeed, the human being shall have complete insight onto himself, meaning there shall be guides, watchers, that bear witness against him by his deeds on what he did, his limbs, as said by Ibn Qutaybah. His limbs and all of what he did is said by Abu Ubaidah. All of what came to him, and all of what came from him. And he shall be full of excuses, seeking some excuse from his limbs and other affairs, as said by the vast majority, seeking some cover, but there shall be none given, as said by Ad-Dahhak, As-Sudai, Az-Zajjaj. And this has been partially mentioned in Surah Al-Nahl, the 16th Surah 36. So do not move your tongue. Now this ayah is making reference to, according to a hadith from Sa'id ibn Jubayr from Ibn Abbas, who said, the Prophet ﷺ he used to be very concerned about the revelation he received. And it would be very difficult for him to memorize it initially. So when revelation came down to him, he would move his tongue and his lips, sometimes reciting the revelation before the angel Jibreel alayhi salam had finished the complete recitation, fearing that if he did not do that, he might not be able to memorize it. But Allah sent down this ayah to tell him, do not hasten in the Quran and the recitation with your tongue so that you might be hasty. Indeed, it is for us to gather it and its recitation, meaning to put it together in your heart. So when we've recited it, when we've gathered it to you, follow its recitation. All the scholars of commentary say this means recite it back when the angel Jibreel alayhi salam has finished from its recitation. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said, this means to follow the recitation, act by it, and follow it after. Ibn Qutaybah has said, also it means follow the halal and haram listed therein. And it is for us to explain it, meaning for us to make it clear on your tongue, so that you recite it just as the angel Jibreel alayhi salam brought it to you. So when the angel Jibreel alayhi salam came to him with it, he would sit and he would wait, and he would recite it. And then when he left, he would recite it just as Allah promised him, as said by Ibn Abbas. It is upon us, as if Allah is saying, is upon us, that we reward with it on the day of resurrection whoever we promised and whoever we threatened with this word, as said by Al-Hasan al-Basri. It is upon us to explain what's in it of the judgments, the halal, the haram, and other matters, as said by Qatada. It is upon us to send it down as a Quran in Arabic, to explain it to the people so that it might be recited accurately. By no means. Abu Jahl, here Allah is saying, by no means. By no means you seek to hasten against it. Now the by no means means that Abu Jahl will not believe in the Quran nor its clarification that Allah gave. Ibn Jarir has said, the affair is not like you say, that you shall not be resurrected, but he calls you to the truth, and you hasten towards the earthly life. You hasten towards the fleshly earthly life. These unbelievers of Mecca love it and do their deeds for it and chase after it, but abandon doing deeds for what's coming in the hereafter. And they abandon doing the deeds in the earthly life for the hereafter. Faces that day shall be radiant, meaning radiant with splendor and beauty and felicity, looking at their Lord. Ata narrated from Ibn Abbas, who said, looking at their Lord, looking at Allah the Exalted. Hasan al-Basri has said, the truth is that faces that day shall be looking at the Creator. This was mentioned by everyone and discussed by Ikrimah. Seeing Allah in the hereafter is truth, and there's no doubt in it. The ahadith in this matter are all authentic. I have mentioned much of this already in two other books that I've written. One called Al-Mughni and another called Al-Hada'iq. So one may refer to those for further details. Faces that day shall also be downcast and frowning. Did they think and believe that they would escape? So he, Allah, is saying as if they were thinking they would escape from the penalty? By no means. When the soul comes up through the throat and comes out, and when the soul is informed of its ultimate end, whether it belongs to the companions of the right hand or the companions of the left hand, And the angels come forward to take it, to take the soul. The angels of mercy or the angels of wrath, which ones shall come to get that soul? Who shall come and get that soul is what shall be determined. And the one whose soul has reached the throat may still think he's in the earthly life, but then when the reality dawns that he is bound, the affair of this earthly life is bound to the affair of the hereafter. It's said by Ibn Abbas and Muqatil. Life and death are bound in one matter because they're connected to one another, as said by Mujahid. And there is a reflection upon this because when someone dies, Allah says, وَالْتَفَّتِ السَّاقُ بِالسَّاقِ, when the 2 feet are bound together. Because when someone is put in the kefin before that, the 2 feet are brought together. The legs are bound so that they don't fall over each other. As said by Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib. And at the time of his death, the 2 feet are together. And this is a symbolism for the difficulties that are to come. Qatada has mentioned this, as Zajjaj is also mentioned. That the last of the difficulties of the earthly life is death. And if you're an unbeliever, this is the beginning of the tribulations of the hereafter. And to your Lord on that day is the end. For the one who did not testify of the truth nor pray. This is referring, فَلَا صَدَّقَ وَلَا صَلَّى. The specific person being referred to was Abu Jahl. But he denied and turned away from Iman. Then he went to his people, informing them and boasting and being proud of that which he had gathered, as mentioned by Ibn Qutaybah. But the truth has come forward. That which has come forward, that which is disliked, you shall certainly taste. Does the human being, this is referring to Abu Jahl, think he should be left alone and not be penalized for that which he did? This is another evidence on the resurrection. Because one of the proofs Allah gives for the resurrection is it not the case that he was not and then he was a sperm drop brought forward out of the fluid? Now, part of this has been mentioned, this discussion on the sperm drop and what came forward. Part of this has been mentioned in Surah Al-Najm, the 53rd Surah, Ayah 24. Then he was a blood clot after the sperm drop. Then فَخَلَقَ, then he, Allah, created in him the soul and expanded his creation, and he made from this water, this fluid, he made from it children. And some of these children will be male and some will be female. Is this same one who did all of that, is this same one not able to then resurrect the dead if he so chooses? So the same one who brought about the beginning of all these affairs, isn't it therefore easier upon him to bring them about a second time? Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu says, it is a correct statement that when any one of you has recited this ayah, that he say after, Allahumma bala. Indeed, Allah, this is the truth. We then come to Surah Al-Insaan, which is also known as Surah Al-Dahr. It is sometimes called Surah Hal-Ata. So it bears 3 names. Surah Al-Insaan, Surah of the human being. Surah Al-Dahr, the Surah of the time. And the Surah Hal-Ata, has there not come? Now this surah is a Medinan surah, as stated by the vast majority, Mujahid and Qatada. But there are some Meccan ayat in it, as discussed by Ibn Yasar, Muqatil, and Ibn Abbas. There is a Meccan ayah that starts with a series of Meccan ayat that go until the end of the surah. So, from the beginning of the surah, all the way up until ayah 24, this is all from Al-Madinah. And from ayah 24 until, from ayah 25 until ayah 31, that is Meccan. This was discussed by Al-Hasan al-Basri, Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl, and Al-Mawardi. Allah the Exalted has said, Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. هل أتى على الإنسان حين من الدهر لم يكن شيئا مذكورا إنا خلقنا الإنسان من نطفة أمشاج نبتليه فجعلناه سميعا بصيرا إنا هديناه السبيل إما شاكرا وإما كفورا إنا أعتدنا للكافرين سلاسل وأغلالا وسعيرا إن الأبرار يشربون من كأس كان مزاجها كافورا عينا يشرب بها عباد الله يفجرونها تفجيرا يوفون بالنذر ويخافون يوما كان شره مستطيرا ويطعمون الطعام على حبه مسكينا ويتيما وأسيرا إنما نطعمكم لوجه الله لا نريد منكم جزاء ولا شكورا إنا نخاف من ربنا يوما عبوسا قمطريرا فوقاهم الله شر ذلك اليوم ولقاهم نضرة وسرورا وجزاهم بما صبروا جنة وحريرا متكئين فيها على الأرائك لا يرون فيها شمسا ولا زمهريرا ودانية عليهم ظلالها وذللت قطوفها تذليلا ويطاف عليهم بآنية من فضة وأكواب كانت قوارير من فضة قدروها تقديرا ويسقون فيها كأسا كان مزاجها زنجبيلا عينا فيها تسمى سلسبيلا ويطوف عليهم ولدان مخلدون إذا رأيتهم حسبتهم لؤلؤا منثورا وإذا رأيت ثم رأيت نعيما وملكا كبيرا عاليهم ثياب سندس خضر واستبرق وحلوا أساور من فضة وسقاهم ربهم شرابا طهورا إن هذا كان لكم جزاء وكان سعيكم مشكورا إنا نحن نزلنا عليك القرآن تنزيلا فاصبر لحكم ربك ولا تطع منهم آثما أو كفورا واذكر اسم ربك بكرة وأصيلا ومن الليل فاسجد له وسبحه ليلا طويلا إن هؤلاء يحبون العاجلة ويذرون وراءهم يوما ثقيلا نحن خلقناهم وشددنا أسرهم وإذا شئنا بدلنا أمثالهم تبديلا إن هذه تذكرة فمن شاء اتخذ إلى ربه سبيلا وما تشاءون إلا أن يشاء الله إن الله كان عليما حكيما يدخل من يشاء في رحمته والظالمين أعد لهم عذابا أليما. Has there not been a time in which the human being was nothing made mention of? And then indeed we created the human being from the sperm drop, spread out and well placed, and then thereafter we made him hearing and seeing. Indeed, we guided him to the path, whether it be one of thankfulness or ungratefulness. And we have prepared for the unbelievers chains and bounds and a scorching punishment. The righteous shall be drinking from a goblet in which it has a hint and taste of camphor, a spring in which the slaves of Allah shall drink from it, which shall be gushing and overflowing, and they shall have access to see this. These same slaves of Allah fulfill the vow, and they fear a day in which, failing to do so, shall bring about an evil that shall be manifest and spread. These slaves of Allah give out the food for the love of Allah to the needy, the orphans, and the prisoners, saying, "We only feed you seeking the face of Allah. We don't want any reward or thanks from you at all. We fear of our Lord a day in which faces shall be downcast and overwhelmed. Allah shall put away from them the evil of that day, and instead fill their faces with radiance and joy. He shall reward them by how they've been patient, with a garden and silken robes, reclining therein on thrones, and they shall not see therein any sun or any searing wind or heat. All shall be brought forth to them near, under shade, in which branches hang down, overladen with fruit and goodness of plenty. They shall be tended to and have move around them utensils of silver and cups on trays of silver. The silver trays and utensils have been spread out, and they bring about all of what they desire. They shall be given a drink of it from a goblet, which has a hint and taste of ginger, from a spring which is named Salsabila. They shall be tended to by eternal youths, in which if any one of you should see them, you would have reckoned them to be resembling pearls. And when you see, and indeed see and look carefully, you see the felicity and a great dominion. They shall be wearing over them clothing of goodness, green and rich in color, and noble in appearance, carrying around trays of silver, and their Lord shall cause them to be given a drink of purity and purifying nature. This is to you a reward, and those among you who are spread out and given this reward shall be thankful indeed. We have sent down to you the Quran in stages and as revelation. Be patient to the judgment of your Lord, and do not obey those among humanity who are sinful or ungrateful. Mention the name of your Lord in the morning and the evening, and in the night prostrate to him and glorify him in the night for a lengthy period of time. Indeed, these ones who love the earthly life and abandon what's behind that shall have a heavy day indeed for them. We created them and shall bring about their hardship. Had we willed, we could have replaced them, someone of equal likeness. This is an admonition. So whoever wills, let him take the means to his Lord. And you do not will anything except that He, Allah, wills. Indeed, Allah is always all-knowing, all-wise. He gives entrance and admittance to whoever He wills into His mercy. And the oppressors shall have prepared for them a stern punishment. Surah Al-Insaan, ayat 1 to 31. When the Exalted One says, has there not been the case? Has there not come to you the knowledge that man, and in this sense it's referring to Nabiyuna Adam alayhi salam, and the time when he had not been created yet. This is referring to 40 years before Nabiyuna Adam alayhi salam was created, when he was merely a clay form, and he had not had the spirit blown into him yet, which is the understanding of the vast majority. But it also refers to all of humanity in a corporate sense. Has no one thought of the fact that at one point they were not, and then they were brought to be? As said by Ibn Abbas, Ibn Jurayj, and others. So he was not, and then he was brought to be. He was nothing mentioned, meaning then he was made to be something mentioned. We created the human being, meaning the children of Nabiyuna Adam alayhi salam, from the sperm drop that is intermittent and mixed, which has fluid from the man and fluid from the woman that later mix with it. It's been placed in a resting place. And then later, this becomes someone that is hearing and seeing. And we put that one to test. And indeed, we guide him to the path, meaning it's made clear to him the path of guidance, either by evidences or sending messengers, whether this one be thankful and guided, meaning that he, Allah says, he creates the one who is thankful or the one who is ungrateful. So he, Allah, has created both the one who is ungrateful and the one who is grateful. Indeed, we prepared for the unbelievers chains and bounds, and fastenings around the neck, and chains on the hands. We've discussed much of this in Surah An-Nisa, the 4th Surah, 10. For the righteous, the abrar, the obedient ones, they are those who have not gone astray. They shall drink from a goblet, a utensil, in which its taste and hint shall be of camphor. As said by, now camphor, kafur, Mujahid says that this camphor in name, and Muqatil have said, in name it is there, but its qualities will be different. That it will be cool and refreshing, as we have in other ayat that mention it, as said by Hasan al-Basri. It has a scent of this, as said by Qatada. Its taste is similar to this, as said by As-Sudai. And kafur is also a spring in the paradise, as said by Ata ibn As-Sa'ib. Because right after this, Allah says, it is a spring in which the slaves of Allah shall drink from it. So kafur is also an actual spring in the paradise. And on account of its good scent, it is referred to as kafur because Allah mentions its good scent. It is a spring in which the slaves of Allah shall drink from it. Now, biha, drink at that place, means that there must be some place where they're drinking from it at, maybe a stopping place. And the slaves of Allah shall drink from it there and take enjoyment of it at that spring. And the slaves of Allah here refer to Allah's most choice servants and allies. So they drink from it whenever they will in the paradise. So whenever the man desires to drink from it, he can take of it what he so wills. And these same slaves of Allah, they fulfill their vows and their oaths. So when they give an oath to obey Allah, they fulfill that oath, and if they give a vow, they fulfill that vow. And they fear a day in which if they fail to do so, they will taste that wrath. They will taste the wrath, as said by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. Muqatil said, the day of resurrection, this wrath is great indeed, because the skies shall be disturbed, as we've been told. The skies shall be rent asunder. The stars shall fall from their places. The angels will be terrified and spread out from place to place. The sun and the moon will be wrapped around and come close to the earth. The mountains will be leveled. The waters will boil over. And everything on the face of the earth of the mountains that is stable, that is constant, will cease to be that thing. The evil of that day of resurrection, meaning the severity, shall come to be. These same slaves of Allah give food out of love for Him, Allah. Now, this ayah was sent down firstly regarding Ali ibn Abi Talib, because it mentioned about how he took from his date palm something that he had. He took wheat one night and gave it away. He gave a third. And the people ate from it. And he gave some to the needy. And they came to him. And then he took another third, and gave some to the orphans. And they took some. Then another group came, and he gave it to the prisoners from the idol worshippers and other people, and they took use from it. And so these ayat were sent down firstly regarding him, but any other believer who did the same thing, as said by Ibn Abbas. It was also discussing Abu Dahdah Al-Ansari, who fasted one day, and when he wanted to break his fast, someone needy came to him. Someone as an orphan came to him, and someone as a prisoner came to them, and he fed them all 3 portions of wheat, and there only remained 1 portion for himself and his family. And this ayah was sent down regarding him, said by Muqatil. So they do this not for any love of a human being, but they do so for the love of Allah. Although they might need those things, they give it for the love of Allah, as said by Ibn Abbas and Mujahid and Az-Zajjaj. They do so for the love of Allah, as said by Darani. And the poor and needy and the orphan have been mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah, the 2nd Surah, 83. And the prisoner here could refer to the one in prison who is a Muslim, said by Ata, Mujahid ibn Jubayr. The prisoner can refer to the idol worshipper who has his rights, said by Hasan al-Basri and Qatada. It can refer to the female prisoner or the wife or woman who is in need, as said by Abu Hamza al-Thamani. And it can also refer to the outright slave, as said by Al-Mawardi. Now, some scholars of commentary have gone to the understanding that the ayah gives praise to feeding the idol worshipper who is a prisoner. And it's been said that this has been abrogated by Surah At-Tawbah, the 9th Surah 5. But this is not true. Because feeding the idol worshipper that is a prisoner, one receives reward. Because this is a type of sadaqah. So how could a type of sadaqah be abrogated when there's no abrogation mentioned for sadaqah? As far as giving zakatul fitr, Al-Qadi Abu Ya'la says zakatul fitr can't be given to the unbelievers, but any type of sadaqah may. But this is the ruling of Al-Qadi Abu Ya'la. And those who believe say, we feed you for the sake of Allah, seeking the reward from Allah. And Allah knows best about their hearts. And He praises them because they seek to please Allah. We want from you no reward, nor thanks. So we want nothing from you in terms of actions or statements. We fear our Lord on a day in which faces shall be downcast. Or fi yawmin asif, the day in which the blast shall come, as mentioned Surah Ibrahim, the 14th Surah 18, in which this is made reference on a day. Sometimes a day can be referring to a specific day in the future. So the penalty of Allah that was coming over the people mentioned in Surah Ibrahim, it's saying as a day, but it is a specific day coming in the future. And sometimes He, Allah, mentions the day of resurrection as a day, although it is known that it is the day to come. And it is indeed a long day, the day in which the man shall be taken. Everything that he has, what's there in between his eyes, what he has ever earned and taken, that shall be known. That shall be laid bare, as said by Mujahid and Qatada, due to the severity. But He, Allah, shall remove from them, the slaves of Allah, the evil of that day because of their obedience to Him in the earthly life. But instead, He shall give them goodness and ennoble and illuminate their faces with joy without any end. Al-Hasan al-Basri says, the illumination in the faces and the joy shall be in the hearts. He shall reward them because they were patient in obeying Him. They were patient in striving against disobedience. He shall give them the paradise, a garden and silken robes. And these silken robes are the clothes of the people of the paradise. They shall be reclining upon thrones. We've mentioned part of this in Surah Al-Kahf, the 18th Surah 31. They shall see no sun therein that shall bother them on account of its heat, nor any searing wind that shall be in severe and cold. This means there won't be any heat or cold coming in the paradise, for there shall be none of the things of this earthly life therein. And there shall be near to them the shade of the trees of the paradise, the branches brought near, so that whatever they seek, they shall have it, as said by Ibn Abbas. And while they recline, or they sit, or they stand, these things are subservient to them, and it shall be brought near, as mentioned in Surah Al-Haqqa, the 69th Surah, Ayah 23. And the cups that have been mentioned in paradise, we mentioned this in Surah Al-Zukhruf, the 43rd Surah, Ayah 71. And those cups shall be gathered in a gathering together of silver and on trays. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said, if you were to compare this to the silver of the earthly life, it would compare the wing of one fly. If you were to compare the water or the other things of the paradise, or the other things in terms of shininess, that which is in this earthly life would not be like the fly of a wing in comparison to the things of the paradise. This was mentioned by Al-Farra and Ibn Qutaybah. So when we see things and likenesses given, silver and whiteness and gleaming and things like this, they are only in the names, but the qualities are different. And whatever they so desire shall be brought forward for them to have. So the utensils are according to what they need and what they so desire, and whether they desire it or whether they are waiting. But they shall never be in need of increase or decrease, because they shall always have that which they require. And this is the very blessing of the taste of the paradise. They shall be given a drink therein in the paradise of a goblet which has the taste of ginger. So this example of ginger and wine and other things has already been discussed by Al-Musayyib ibn Alas and others. And the taste of ginger and these other things is emphasizing the sweetness, the beauty and the goodness. And the zanjabil is also the name of a spring which the righteous shall drink from. I recited to my teacher Abu Mansur al-Lughawi this very ayah, and he said, you know, the expression zanjabil is an Arabized word. It came from another language. Ad-Dinuri said it is actually a bush that grows in Oman. And it grows in the earth there. And it's normally not eaten from when it's dry. It has to be broken down and cut. And the wet portions inside are there. Initially, it was brought by the Chinese to us. And this is how it came to be known in Arabic. Now, it's possible that the zanjabil made reference to can be a drink or even a food, because it's only been made reference to here very briefly. Just the same way as camphor has been made reference to. But the drink of the people of the paradise is of the coolness of camphor and the taste of zanjabil and the scent of musk. It is a spring therein that they shall be given. And the name of the spring is also this spring with the zanjabil. The name of the spring is called Salsabil. That's why Allah says, Tusamma Salsabila. Now I recited to my Sheikh Abu Mansur Al-Lughawi this ayah, Tusamma Salsabila, and he said, you do know that Salsabila, this is a non-Arabic word that came into Arabic years and years and years ago. And it is a common, it is a proper name that has come in from another language. Al-Ambari and others have said that Salsabil is the description of a type of water that is easy and flows and is soft on the throat. So it is not hard water or brackish water. And Salsabila has come into Arabic but has been Arabized. Some have said that Salsabila is an actual compound of Sal, ask, Sabila, for a path, meaning to it, the paradise. But this is not correct. Salsabila is a foreign word. And they shall be tended by eternal youths from among the boys. This is mentioned in Surah Al-Waqi'ah, ayah 17. Were you to see them, you would have thought them as pearls on account of their gleaming countenance and their nobility, and on account of the clothing and noble clothing that they are wearing, and looking upon them and seeing their goodness, and seeing how quickly they're moving around in service. So when they're seen in the paradise, there's no description for the goodness of that day. It is a great and noble thing indeed. And those therein will desire nothing except for the goodness of it. And no angel shall come in among them except by seeking permission from those people. The people of the paradise, the righteous that are being tended to by these people, shall be wearing clothes of nobility, and their description has been given in the paradise of great nobility, long and luxurious, and green in appearance. So the clothing that is green in appearance, 2 long pieces, is of fine appearance. And He, Allah, shall suffice them with a purifying drink. What this means is, tahuran means that in the paradise they will not need to defecate nor urinate on account of drinking the wine or other things of the paradise. This was mentioned by Atiyah. Because the wine and other things of the paradise are pure. There is no najis in them, like the wine and other intoxicants of the earthly life, because those things intoxicate. This was mentioned by Al-Farra. Whereas Abu Qilaba has said, they are not in need of defecation after food. They will be brought drinks after food that is pure, and they shall drink from it. And they shall benefit from that. But their stomachs shall not expand. But rather, they merely sweat, which is like musk, and other good affairs come from this. This, meaning what's been described of the felicities of the paradise, is a reward for you therein for the deeds that you did. And it is your deeds in the earthly life and obedience that are a safekeeping for you. And that is part of the reward in the paradise. We've sent down to you this Quran in stages as revelation. So this is the preference that's been given in Revelation. It was not sent down all at once. And this actually shows the rank that the Quran has over other revelations because it was sent down piecemeal at intervals. Be patient for the judgment of your Lord. We've already mentioned some of this in Surah Tur, ayah 48, and Surah Al-Qalam, the 68th Surah, ayah 48. The scholars of commentary, they say that some of the scholars of commentary say this has been abrogated by Surah At-Tawbah, the 9th Surah, ayah 5, but this is not correct. Do not obey from the idol worshippers of Mecca, the sinful or the ungrateful. So do not obey the rebellious, the sinful, the ungrateful. And these are both fitting descriptions for Abu Jahl. So the ungrateful is Abu Jahl, this rebellious sin is Utbah ibn Rabi'ah. And the ungrateful can also refer to Al-Walid ibn Al-Mughira. Because they both say, leave this matter alone. We're not happy with you to give our wealth, our marriage partners, or anything else to the cause of such a thing. But he, Allah, says, and remember the name of your Lord. Meaning, remember him with tawheed. Remember his name in the salah. In the Fajr time, and in the evening around Asr. So mention the name of your Lord is referring to the salahs of Dhuhr and Asr, lest you forget them. And in the night, prostrate to him, meaning Maghrib and Isha. And glorify him in the night, a long duration. This is the prayer of Qiyamul Layl. Now this was originally a compulsory prayer for the Prophet ﷺ. But for his ummah, it's optional. Indeed, these ones, meaning the idol worshippers of Mecca, they love the earthly life and the hastiness of it. But they abandon what's behind that, what's in front of them, of a hard day coming to them. They've left Iman in that, and acting for it, and doing righteous deeds. But He, Allah, has mentioned His might, and He said, we have created them, and made affairs straightened for them in their circumstances, as it shall come to be the case. This was mentioned by Ibn Abbas, Mujahid, Qatada, Al-Farra, Ibn Qutayba, and Az-Zajjaj. Further to this, he said, had we willed, we could have destroyed them and brought others besides them and made them a replacement. Indeed, this is a remembrance. We've already discussed this in Surah Al-Muzammil, the 73rd Surah, 19. And you do not will anything, meaning going on to the path, except that He, Allah, has willed it, meaning He's willed that for you, meaning guidance or no guidance. He admits whoever He wills and gives them entrance into His mercy. The rahmah here is the paradise. While the oppressors, meaning the idol worshippers, they are not given admittance into His mercy. So He admits who He wills into His mercy, and He, Allah, punishes the oppressors. And He has prepared for them a severe penalty indeed. This was mentioned in just these words by Abu al-Ali, Al-Jawzi, Ibn Abi Abla, and others. And the Exalted One, He then brings us to Surah Al-Mursalat. This is a Meccan surah. This is a Meccan surah, as is mentioned by Ibn Abbas, Qatada, Muqatil. But there is one ayah that is from Al-Madinah. And it's ayah 48. The Exalted One, he says, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim wal-Mursalati urfa fal-'asifati 'asfa وَالنَّاشِرَاتِ نَشْرًا فَالْفَارِقَاتِ فَرْقًا فَالْمُلْقِيَاتِ ذِكْرًا عُذْرًا أَوْ نُذْرًا إِنَّمَا تُوعَدُونَ لَوَاقِعٌ فَإِذَا النُّجُومُ طُمِسَتْ وإذا السماء فرجت وإذا الجبال نسفت وإذا الرسل أقتت لأي يوم أجلت ليوم الفصل وما أدراك ما يوم الفصل ويل يومئذ للمكذبين ألم نهلك الأولين ثم نتبعهم الآخرين كذلك نفعل بالمجرمين ويل يومئذ للمكذبين. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the compassionate. By those sent forward, and by those who snatch out and tear out, by those told to spread out and go forward, by those who separate, by those who come to the meeting of remembrance, whether excused or whether given by oath. Indeed, you were promised a great undertaking. When the stars are blotted out, when the sky is split, when the mountains are laid bare, when the messengers are gathered together for the appointed time, for the very day in which all affairs have been brought to bear, for the day of sorting out. What will cause you to know what is the day of sorting out? Woe be to the deniers on that day. Did we not destroy those nations before? Then we followed them up with those who came in the latter days. Likewise, we shall do with the criminals. Woe be to the deniers on that day. Surah Al-Mursalat, the 77th surah, ayat 1 to 19. The Exalted One, when he said, by those sent forth, this refers to the winds sent forth one after the other. As said by Ibn Mas'ud, Ibn Abbas, Mujahid and Qatada, radiallahu anhum, and also the angels who've been sent with righteousness, who come and move in the earth and bring these winds by the command of Allah, and also His prohibitions they bring. As said by Ibn Mas'ud, Abu Hurairah, and Muqatil. So they have been sent, as said by Al-Farra, with the righteousness, and they come forward to come as harbingers of destruction or bringers of glad tidings. And that the messengers know of these angels and the miracles that they bring. As said by Zajjaj, the angels and the winds that they bring are referred to. And the strong winds that snatch out, the angels that snatch out the souls. Those sent forth, the winds which push the clouds, which the angels bring these and do these by the command of Allah. And the angels bring and spread out the books, as said by Abu Salih. The pages that are spread out in front of Allah the Exalted, that contain the books of His slaves, as said by Ad-Dahhak. And the resurrection, which shall spread out the souls in front of Allah the Exalted. The rain which spreads vegetation, as said by Al-Mawardi. Those who separate, the fariqat, they separate between the truth and falsehood, as said by the vast majority. The fariqat, because the Quran separates between the halal and haram, as said by Al-Hasan al-Basri, Qatada, Ibn Kaysan. The winds that separate the clouds into different bundles and groups. The messengers that separate between the different parties, as said by Zajjaj. Those who come forward to meet. The angels are being referred to as bearing the revelation that come to the prophets, as said by Ibn Abbas, Qatada, and the vast majority. And the messengers who come forward with what was sent down upon them to the different nations, as said by Qatrib. Whether it be a little or a lot, heavy or great, an excuse or a vow, udran aw nudran. They come forward from Allah and bring the tidings that they have been told to bring. Indeed, the reality you have been promised. So what you've been promised of the hour, the resurrection, the reward, and the accounting is all true, and it shall come to be. And then he mentions some of the signs that you will see when the stars are blotted out, meaning when their light is blotted out, when the sky is split, when the mountains are laid bare, all of them with great speed and quickness to where they're leveled and flattened, when the messengers are gathered together at the appointed time. And this appointed time is the day of resurrection. That is the time where all are gathered. And it's one time. And that is where the judgment shall be made between all the nations. On which day has this been appointed? And the people will be surprised by this when they're told in this earthly life. But it is the day of sorting out, the day in which Allah the Exalted shall sort between the creations. And that day is so severe that Allah repeated it by saying, what shall cause you to know what is the day of sorting out? Woe be that day to the deniers of resurrection. Then Allah the Exalted as informed regarding the action of the previous nations. He said, did we not destroy the previous nations, meaning with punishment in this earthly life when they denied their messengers? Then we followed them up with the latter day nations, so nations that would come after them. So Allah, it is as if He is saying, as said by Ibn Abbas, is it not we're able to destroy the previous nations and follow them up with the latter day in one move? Is it not then easier for the day of resurrection? So here Allah is showing complete truth in this regard, that He's bringing His judgment to pass. So the first are followed up by the last. The first criminal is always followed by the last. There's the first criminal that does it, and then those that follow after copy. This is mentioned by Muqatil. And the latter day, so the unbelievers of Mecca who deny the Prophet ﷺ are following the example of their ancestors. And the ancestors of all these mushriks, as said by Ibn Jarir, are the people of Nuh, and then Ad, and then Thamud. The latter days are Ibrahim, Lut, and Madian, alayhim as-salam. Likewise, meaning similarly, we shall do to the criminals, the deniers. Now, someone may ask, why has Allah repeated this refrain? Woe be to the deniers that day. The answer is every ayah of those who've denied. This ayah, Allah is bringing this to your mind so that you understand the severity of it, so that you understand the seriousness of it, and that you understand that there is no escape from Allah's judgment in this regard. So He has repeated it so that it stays in your mind. The Exalted One then says, أَلَمْ نَخْلُقكُّم مِّن مَّاءٍ مَّهِينٍ فَجَعَلْنَاهُ فِي قَرَارٍ مَّكِينٍ إِلَى قَدَرٍ مَّعْلُومٍ فَقَدَرْنَا فَنِعْمَ الْقَادِرُونَ وَيْلٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ لِلْمُكَذِّبِينَ أَلَمْ نَجْعَلِ الْأَرْضَ كِفَاتًا أَحْيَاءً وَأَمْوَاتًا وَجَعَلْنَا فِيهَا رَوَاسِيَ شَامِخَاتٍ وَأَسْقَيْنَاكُم مَّاءً فُرَاتًا وَيْلٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ لِلْمُكَذِّبِينَ انطَلِقُوا إِلَى مَا كُنتُم بِهِ تُكَذِّبُونَ انطَلِقُوا إِلَى ظِلٍّ ذِي ثَلَاثِ شُعَبٍ لَا ظَلِيلٍ وَلَا يُغْنِي مِنَ اللَّهَبِ إنها ترمي بشرر كالقصر كأنه جمالة صفر ويل يومئذ للمكذبين هذا يوم لا ينطقون ولا يؤذن لهم فيعتذرون ويل يومئذ للمكذبين هذا يوم الفصل جمعناكم والأولين فإن كان لكم كيد فكيدون ويل يومئذ للمكذبين إن المتقين في ظلال وعيون وفواكه مما يشتهون كلوا واشربوا هنيئا بما كنتم تعملون إنا كذلك نجزي المحسنين ويل يومئذ للمكذبين كلوا وتمتعوا قليلا إنكم مجرمون ويل يومئذ للمكذبين وإذا قيل لهم اركعوا لا يركعون ويل يومئذ للمكذبين فبأي حديث بعده يؤمنون. Did we not create you from an admixture fluid, and we placed it in a firmly established location until a preordained time? And we ordained affairs, and how good was the affair that we ordained and bring about? Woe be to the deniers on that day. Did we not make the earth as a place of gathering for the living and the dead? And we made therein pegs standing firm, and we established therein waterways, rivers and valleys. Woe be to the deniers on that day. Go to that which you used to deny. Go to the outer darkness, the 3 layers of outer darkness. No shade, and nothing can give any benefit or help from the flame. Indeed, it courses over the evil and rises up the size of castles, and has the yellowness like one sees on the back of camels. Woe be to the deniers on that day. This is a day in which they shall not speak, nor shall they be given permission, and they will not be able to seek excuse. Woe be to the deniers on that day. This is the day of sorting out. We have gathered you and the previous nations. So, if you possess any plan or scheme, then bring it forward if you dare. Woe be to the deniers on that day. Indeed, the pious shall be in shaded areas and near springs, with fruits of that which they shall so desire. Eat and drink of the goodness of that which you used to do. Indeed, we that day shall reward the excellent ones. Woe be to the deniers on that day. Eat and drink for a little while, you criminals. You shall come to know. Woe be to the deniers that day. And when it is said to them, bow down, they do not bow down. Woe be to the deniers on that day. Which speech after this speech will they believe in if they do not believe? Surah Al-Mursalat, the 77th surah, ayat 20 to 50. And when the Exalted One is said that He has ordained all things, before then, He says, did we not create you from a mixed and weak and small base fluid, and we placed it in a place that is qirarim makin, an established place. This is referring to the womb, for an ordained period of time. This is the period of however long the pregnancy shall be. And we have ordained this matter to come to pass. And it has been given a period of a little while. Did we not make the earth a habitation, a holding place for both the living and the dead? The living walk upon the face of the earth. The dead are buried deep within its belly. So this is a holding place. And so this is why these locations are referred to as places for the deceased, because they are places for the deceased, for the living and the dead, as said by the vast majority. Further to this, the Exalted One has the earth not been made as a habitation for the living and the dead, meaning the vegetation and other things, the destroyed places. So the earth is both alive, but has also suffered destruction at the hands of the creations. So has it not been made a habitation for both of these things? And we place therein firm standing pegs. Now we've already discussed this in Surah Al-Hijr, the 15th Surah, Ayah 22, and Surah Al-Jinn, the 72nd Surah, Ayah 16. As for Furat, we've already discussed in Surah Al-Furqan, the 25th Surah, Ayah 53, and Surah Fatir, Ayah 12. So these things that Allah has mentioned would seem to be more difficult to create the first time around than the resurrection. He, Allah, then says, now go to that which you used to deny in the earthly life, meaning go to the fire. Go to outer darkness. Go therein. So the great smoke, the raising of voices, the penalty, the flames, all of these things go towards there. Now the believers, the friends of Allah, shall be in the shade of the throne, where there shall be no shade but the shade of Allah. So there's a distinction between the shade the believers will be in and the outer darkness. But there shall be no shade for the unbelievers, not on that day. But they shall be at the very flames of the fire, and it is more stern against you than the very heat of the sun. Mujahid is mentioned. This is a branch that is beyond human understanding. There shall be one group on the right hand, one group on the left hand, and they shall be gathered all around. Those who are wicked shall have nothing but thorns and pus and the like as their end, as they enter into the very fire. There is no protection from the very flames of the great fire. Then Allah gives the description that the evil ones that shall be therein shall have crashing down upon them waves of the fire the size of castles or fortresses, like the waves of the very oceans. Yellow and blazing like the backs of camels. And red and yellow in color due to the severity of these flames that are kindled against them. This is a day in which they shall not speak. Now this, the scholars of commentary say, doesn't mean they'll never speak, but there are certain portions on the day of resurrection, certain points in time where they are not allowed to speak, and certain times where they do. Because they shall be speaking at certain points of the day of resurrection, certain points where they shall be disputing. Then they shall have the seal put on their mouths. Then their hands and their feet shall speak that point. And then that speaking shall establish the proof against them. They will not speak after that once the accounting is done, once the reckoning is against them. This is the day of sorting out between the people of paradise and the people of the fire. We have gathered you deniers from this ummah. The first of the deniers who denied their prophets. So, if you have some scheme or plan you can bring about, then do your worst. This establishes that Allah the Exalted dares the unbelievers to bring their worst if they dare. Then he said to the believers are in shades under the trees of the paradise. The shade, as well as springs of water. Now we've already discussed a lot of this in other ayat, up until the statement where it shall be said to them, eat and drink of the goodness of that which you had done in the earthly life when you were obeying Allah. Then Allah says to the unbelievers of Mecca, eat and take your fill for a little while in the earthly life, up until the day when your appointed time comes. For you are criminals, idol worshippers, associating partners with Allah. And when it is said to them, bow down, when they are called to prostrate on the day of resurrection, as mentioned by Ibn Abbas, when they are called to prostrate in this earthly life, when it's said to them, bow down, pray with us, be Muslim, they do not do so. And this is the understanding of Mujahid and others. These are people that are called to pray and then they do not do so. This was sent down regarding Thaqif when the Messenger of Allah ﷺ commanded them to pray. And they said, we'd rather not. It is no harm upon us. And at that point, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, there is no good in any religion that has no ruku' or bowing in it. This is collected by Imam Abu Dawud. So which speech shall they believe in after this if they do not believe? Meaning, if they don't bear witness to this Quran, then which book after it could they ever believe in? There's no book that they could possibly believe in thereafter. Close quote. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم أستغفر الله إن الله غفور رحيم يرحم الراحمين ولا إله إلا الله. I wanted to say briefly before opening it for Q&A, we have reached the end of the 29th Juz, alhamdulillah. I did not know if we would ever reach this day because no one knows what their longevity is. I don't know if we'll reach the end of the Tafsir of the Quran, I don't know. But I did not know if we would ever reach a day like this because of there were a lot of things in the background in all of our lives. And as a group, we had a lot of different things. But for whatever reason, Allah kept gathering us back together and bringing us back together and putting it in your hearts to put it in my heart. Say, sometimes I'd be in many different places that Allah would put me. But there'd always be that Muslim brother who would say, so when are we starting Tafsir class again? And somehow, some way, Allah will put the fire back in everybody and we'd be back on it again. And then there'd be illnesses or other things. Life would get in the way again. And then some brother that Allah would light a flame inside would say, are we starting Tafsir the next week? And they'd never say when. They'd always given are we starting it? What about next week? What about, it'd always be some time where I had little prep time. Very little prep time. It's like, it's meant to happen. It's meant to be. Alhamdulillah. Now, for this last juzza, inshallah, we recite it as normal, but because we're doing a huge khatam, when we reach Surah Al-Duha, from Surah Al-Duha all the way to Surah Al-Nas, when we complete the recitation of each surah, we say Allahu Akbar together as a jama'ah, and then we read through the tafsir of it. So you'll have to prepare yourself so that I'll straighten that out more as time goes on. We have completed 58 hizb or 29 juz. There are 60 hizb in the Mus'haf. So that means we are on the 59th hizb. That means 2 more hizb, 1 more juz. There's 2 hizb in Juz Amma. Juz Amma is 23 pages versus every other juz being 20. Right? So Allah has brought us about to where you can see even in the Imam's tafsir that I've already discussed this. I've already dealt with this. You can refer back to this. We've come that far to where the Imam can say now, I've already talked about that. So now we're taking counsel, wise aphorisms, good witness. We've gotten past all the narratives, all the ayat judgments. I mean, there was a point where when we were so deep in Surah Al-Baqarah, our brothers were wondering, when is Allah going to talk to the men? He keeps saying all this stuff about what the ladies get. And then finally, we reached Surah Al-Ma'idah. Now Allah's talking to men. Before that time, we're thinking, we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to do this. For a moment, some slaves of Allah started to second guess themselves. Man, getting the bum deal being guys. And then we thought, okay, we've reached Surah Al-Ma'idah, alhamdulillah. But then we found out we are getting the rough deal because of all the responsibilities and everything else. But finally, Allah was talking to us. We have made a tremendous contribution. So far, I have seen no one else do what we've tried to do, which is to go cover to cover through the Quran, to do the tafsir to the best of our ability. My hope is that someone will come in the future, if Allah blesses us, to finish it. And they don't necessarily have to do this tafsir, but maybe do another tafsir. And maybe top what I've done. Maybe they'll do something else, like maybe Ibn Kathir, maybe Ibn Atiyah, maybe some of the well-known scholars of tafsir, and maybe top and make it better than what I've done, because I miss things off, or there's parts that I'll forget to go over. I'll be reading a page, and maybe my choice of words isn't as sharp and as crisp as maybe the next person will be that does this. Probably the next man that does this after my time. I don't know. But one thing is for sure. I think in this tafsir, 98% of the way through now, that we know what Allah in His revelation has said, and we know what Islam stands for. We know Islam doesn't call for indiscriminate killing. We know Islam does not call for murder. We know all these things now. We know that what Islam stands for, what it doesn't. We know the fiqh in here. We know that wudu is mentioned in the Quran. We know that different prophets are. We know all these things now. Things that we had no idea that this book was a mystery to many of us. And now part of that mystery has been unraveled. It's sort of like, for the first time, I hope that we're opening up the Quran and saying, it's Allah's book, but it's my book too. I can look in it, I can study it, I can act on it, I can carry out the obligations, and I can take wisdoms away from it. So it's Allah's word, His speech, but it's my book because Allah's given it to me to carry out some obligations. So whether someone was here from the beginning or whether they just joined in, that's okay. Because inshallah, for posterity, the recordings that we've done will be left behind for any of those who listen at their leisure as they so decide. I say, in an anticipatory sense, that I appreciate your tolerating this horrible accent. Subhanallah wa bihamdih. I don't know how you made it through for 5 years. I would have thrown fresh fruit and vegetables by now, but somehow you made it through. So I appreciate your patience for all the delays that happened, your steadfastness and constantly coming and saying, shall we head back to it, and making sure that after each Eid that we try to start it in a timely fashion, because it's very easy to weave off and then to forget, and or for people to go far apart and then you forget and then you go. We've had very few interruptions to the tafsir from the time that we've started it to now. Those of you that were here that remember when the page marker seemed like it was never moving, when we spent a year in Surah Al-Baqarah and brothers started to learn the meaning of the Arabic word yes, despair, because they wondered if we might ever finish it, if the Mahdi may come before the completion of this Quran, if Nabiyyuna Isa alayhi salam may descend before, if the apocalyptic prophecies made within might come to pass before we reach them. But Allah has blessed us to make it. So again, I say this in an anticipatory way. I say this in an anticipatory way that I appreciate this time that we have spent together. This is a huge investment from your lives, and maybe something, inshallah, for the future for your children, because these recordings are here for you to use, for everyone to take advantage of, to use. People contacted me from Egypt, a Muslim brother that I knew when we were first starting out. He says, "Dear Brother Abu Ja'far, I hope you don't mind. I've digitally remastered some of these. He says, I've ripped them from your YouTube page," which at the point I didn't understand what ripping meant. I thought, subhanAllah, he's ripped them from the page. So I had to check to see if they were still on the page, because I'm old and I don't know what ripped means. But then I realized, no, he means he's taken them from, and then he said, I've digitally remastered them, and I listen to them on the way to work or when I'm going somewhere. Is that okay? Because I don't want to. No, it's okay. Go ahead, do it. Whatever it is you want to. A Muslim brother contacted me and said if I could have fewer pauses if possible, because he listens to it when he's at the weight room training, and he'll sometimes think it's the end of the tafsir, and he thinks, subhanAllah, that's a jip. It's only been 50 minutes or 60 minutes. It's like, okay, I'll try to have fewer pauses, fewer sniffing, less sniffing, if you can do that. Right? So, alhamdulillah, there's people out there that are listening and are benefiting from it. So, inshallah, I hope that some good comes of it. So, I now open it up for any questions, if anyone has any questions, or if brothers are just exhausted. Are there any questions? Yes, one brave soul. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Assalamu alaikum.
In one of the surahs, it's constantly being referenced. Allah makes reference to the fact, gives a lot of specific details and descriptions of the flames and the fire, the severity, the intensity, and the colour of the fire. But I think in either a hadith or somewhere else I've heard where the description of the fire when it was made, and the final colour of the fire was meant to be black. So am I guessing that's meant to be, that's a general ruling, or is that only specific to only part of the fire being black? And in this case, the fire is, where it's been referenced, to the back of a camel being as in yellow, as that's the intensity, as in how do you reconcile this point?
Question is regarding the great fire that's mentioned in the hadith, in which the Prophet ﷺ said, when the fire was first made, it burned white hot, then red hot, and then finally the flames burned themselves and became black. Versus these ayat on the fire being red or yellow in color and such, and how do we reconcile this? Well, firstly, we have to remember there are different parts of the great fire. Number one. We remember the hadith in Al-Bakri where sometimes the fire is burned for such a way that it's burnt other parts of itself and damaged other parts of itself. So it complained to Allah, and Allah gave it permission to take 2 breaths, right, so that it may cool its intensity. And these breaths represent summer and winter. That hadith in Al-Bukhari. Further to this, we also remember when Allah talks in these ayat about the fire, He mentions kindling it. And whenever something is kindling and when it rears up, it blows up again and becomes yellowish black. So it's still black, but if it's kindled up, where it's stoked, it then returns to a color. Like any time where you have a fire where it burns and it becomes embers and such, or it becomes so hot, when you rekindle it or you stoke it, it yellows or it reddens up again. So we're seeing that Allah's mentioning, yes, the fire is black, but when it becomes stoked, rekindled, re-emblazoned, it becomes hot again, it becomes more brilliant and more searing. So this is one of the reconciliations. All right. Is there another question? Yes. No?
Is there a part of hell that's is there a part of hell that's cold instead of heat?
The Great Fire, regarding Jahannam, the Great Fire, there are a hadith that mention a coldness that is such that burns, that sears. A burd. A coldness that is such that burns or sears. And if you want to look at an example of this, a dunyawi example, although it's only a name, if you've ever tried to hold dry eye, don't do it. But if you remember someone that you knew that ever tried to hold dry ice and burned themselves, so it was so cold it actually burned. Don't you do it, but if you knew someone that might have, that burned themselves, as I knew someone that, being curious, burned himself. So yes, there are parts of the fire that are such that the cold is such that the cold actually burns. Yes. Question? No? Okay. So we'll close here. And inshallah next week we'll be starting with Juz Amma. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdika wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk innahu ghafurur rahim rahimin wa la ilaha illa Allah wassalamu alaykum.